I'd like to welcome you all to the Christ Church podcast. I'm your host, Bryan, and this is Father Troy. And we've been discussing in our various podcasts the psalm that is going to be presented in the upcoming service, which today would be the Ash Wednesday service, I believe, right? It's also Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day to those who are listening to us. We're discussing the various psalms, and it isn't to interpret them for you so much as to just discuss our impression of it and what we think about it and give food for thought, because so often when you're in a service, things become kind of rote or even mysterious or a little further from today's conversation. It's kind of nice to relate it to our daily life and work and the things that we're about in today's world. So that's kind of where we're going with this. Hope it strikes that chord with you. If we could have today's psalm, which is
Psalm 51, a portion of Psalm 51, which reads like this. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. According to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. Wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is always before me. Against you, you only have I sinned, and done what is evil in your sight, so that you are proved right when you speak, and justified when you judge. Surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me. Surely you desire truth in the inner parts. You teach me wisdom in the inmost place. Cleanse me with hyssop, and I will be clean. Wash me, and I will be whiter than snow. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice. Hide your face from my sins and blot out all my iniquity. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore me to the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me.
that was a pretty long one today.
There's more too, but
yeah.
we get the gist.
Okay. I read through this previously, and I was telling Father Troy that there are some things that questions that pop up in my head as I'm reading through this. It's all about forgiveness. Please cleanse me from my sins. I'm sorry for what I've done. And we start every Mass the same way. We start off saying, cleanse me of my sins, forgive me for the things left undone and the things that I've done. And we theoretically are doing this all day long, every day. We're asking forgiveness for things that we might have done. And it kind of brought when I'm pondering a little bit this morning, it popped into my head that, all right, at what point are we not really asking forgiveness in the right way, or are we just kind of going through the motions of it? And I kind of wanted to throw Father Troy under the bus today with this. That how do we reconcile that we're constantly asking forgiveness at like little kids? I got my hand in the cookie jar. I got caught. Are you really contrite? Are you really forgiving, asking forgiveness? Or do you really think that deep down somewhere you're probably going to reach into that cookie jar another time? I was kind of struggling with that this morning. So when we came in today, I told Father Troy, I'd like to throw you under the bus and get your thoughts on this. So here we are.
Here we are. And we talked briefly about sort of the two different umbrellas, if you will, of sin that we know we've done and sin that we don't even realize we've committed. And then within both of those, we have things that we have done actively or things that we have left undone passively. And in the midst of all of that, I think in verse 3, which reads, For I know my transgressions and my sin is always before me. We have our answer that David here has reflected and come to a place where he understands what he's done wrong. And so the short answer to that question is, I think reflection is the key. Taking the time to think about the ways that we have fallen short of God's glory, which is the language we hear on Sundays, or we'll hear today in worship too, on Ash Wednesday. Being able to reflect, be honest, which is difficult when we're talking about these sorts of things, that can lead us to be truly sorry, to amend our ways. And so maybe next time we pass by the cookie jar, to use that metaphor, so it also, forgiveness also gives us that firm foundation to be able to move through that reflection, not with the fear of being condemned. We may be afraid of what we'll find in that reflection, but we can do that because of the forgiveness that Christ is ready, willing, and able to offer us through his sacrifice. That was a longer answer, I guess, than I said it was going to be.
Well, it's a deep subject, so you're going to have a longer answer. And I think the value of these Psalms, too, I never really realized too much until we started delving into them, that it is such food for thought. There's so many more things in there than what appears. And I think we all need to, I guess, do more reflection on it. That's kind of the cool thing about it. In this case, the general topic was forgiveness. King David is saying, well, I did a bad thing. I really feel badly about it. I'm sorry. Distill that down to our daily life and work. And even if you haven't done something terrible and part of the, like one of the violating one of the 10 commandments, say, or something like that, there's so many little things that we do or don't do during our daily life and work that it's I think brought into play in today's psalm. That's my humble interpretation of it today.
Yeah, and being honest, I think, is one of the hardest things to do, especially when reflecting or then confronting somebody that we've hurt, because it means we have to be humble, and humility is not really a virtue in our culture these days, or at least not true humility. There's prideful humility. Look how humble I am, right? The religious leaders that Jesus calls out, and we'll hear more about that later today in the gospel. But being truly humble, being able to say the words, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? Here's how I plan to move forward. That's a more difficult thing. And certainly you're not alone in that. I walk with you in that. I've had to do that on a regular basis, a daily basis. But this also says, when we get to this point, when we've reflected and we understand what we've done wrong, and then we go to that person that we have hurt, and we say those words, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? What we're saying also is that I love you enough to be humble. I love you enough. This matters to me enough to move through this with you. So remember that too, because that's important, that you don't go through this alone by any means. David himself, the king of Israel, went through it, and it's a very human experience.
I think that's a really good way of tying this all the way back around into Valentine's Day.
Oh, there we go.
Loving people around you. So.
Bingo.
Very clever of you to do that.
That was not me. I didn't mean to do that at all, but thank you.
I like that.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps us up here for this session. Stay tuned for more Christ Church podcasts coming soon.
And we thank you for joining us.